two gentlemen that we are hosting today is Jimmy Karaoke, who is the Sales and Marketing Director of Sarova, and Mike Mashade, who is the CEO of the Kenya Associations of Hotel Keepers. Welcome, and thank you so much for making time. Maybe that first question, is tourism now on the rise? Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Willis.
Yes.
The advisory was reviewed just last week. And you remember we said that this is welcome news because we can go back to the source markets and start advertising and selling the product. So it is very, very good news, and it's something that we think will lead to increased numbers over a period of time. But we also, on our part, have a lot of work to do to bring them back, because it's not a switch that you just off and on.
Yes.
It's a process that you'd have to go into to bring in the tourists.
Jimmy, what kind of work is this that needs now to be done to start attracting back the tourists?
Thanks, Willis. I think it's very important, I think, first of all, to point out that I think the UK has been a very important international source, an international tourist source market. And, when one discusses the issues around the downgrading of the FCO advice, it has to be specific to the UK market. But I'd like to also say that the domestic tourist market in Kenya, which comprises Kenyan citizens and residents in Kenya, is also it's a very important market. And I think it's important to recognize that we are today, tourism in Kenya has evolved. We've come a long way. It's developed very, very well. We're in a very good space right now where we have a very healthy mix of traveler. So, we've got the domestic traveler, we've got the international traveler. I think to bring back international visits, it's important. Tourism is an export product, very much like tea and coffee. It is an export product. It brings in foreign exchange, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the lifting of the travel advisory is great, but as Mike has said, there's still work to be done. We need to bring the tourists here. They need to get here. I think, fortunately, there is connectivity between the UK and Kenya. Kenya Airways flies there daily. British Airways flies there daily. So I think it's more about going out and carrying out a lot more marketing, communication about, what's available in Kenya in terms of the product. There's so much that one can do visiting the destination. So I think we also need a lot of support from the government in terms of creating the enabling environment, making sure that there's more positive being communicated as opposed to keeping silent and letting people create their own perceptions about the destination. So we need to do a lot of marketing, a lot of promotion. We need to encourage more airlines to fly into Kenya from these international source markets. So there's quite a bit, and there's strategies in place by individual organizations, by the associations. So the work has now, really, this is now when the work starts.
And Mike, is that support there from the government? Do you feel that that support is there? And also, what has been said, and remember we've just had a short discussion here earlier, is that when you say, for example, that we're looking at, let's say, a year, is that a correct timeline before we see a recovery?
Let me start with the first question. The support we feel is there, and the biggest statement of government commitment came in the budget when tourism recovery was allocated 5.2 billion shillings. This is the highest allocation in the history of Kenya for tourism. So we do feel that if you look at the budgeting process through Treasury, Parliament, and so on, you'll find that it was all synchronized. That the government recognized the fact that we were in a difficult situation and we needed to get out of it, and so did parliamentarians. So we do feel that there is that support, and we commend government for that. The other question about the recovery period is you must also look at the booking patterns of a market like the UK. Decisions are made fairly early. If I'm a UK citizen and I want to travel on holiday, today, I will know where I'm going next year. And this is why you find that we're talking about the lead time. It's not that that we can go back immediately and get the tourists back. You need to put in motion some promotions and marketing campaigns
so is this
so they
year,
can make a decision.
Sorry, is this year for the UK part of the tourism or the tourism as a whole?
You see, the travel advice was affecting UK citizens.
Yes.
It was specific to UK citizens. And if you will recall last year, when the travel advice was upgraded, you will recall that a major charter airline actually pulled out citizens who were on holiday, paid up 2 weeks. People had arrived the day before, and the day after they were told, you've got to get on the plane and go back to the UK. So in terms of the UK market itself, you need lead time. Fortunately, there's a window now between now and November, because there's sales going on for the winter season. So if we are able to get in there and go out with some messages to the market, you could see some sort of recovery coming back in the winter season. Some of those charter airlines had given us an indication that they would come back around February next year if the advice was lifted. So that's the basis of our assessment. It's not that that we are saying that you can't recover immediately. You can do that, but the reality on the ground is that it does take time. Decisions have been made by people as to where they are going this winter season, and for you to change those decisions, you need to work a lot harder. And then you also need to bring back the charter airlines that left, and we have to work on those as well, which we've been doing together with jointly with the Kenya Tourism Board.
Right, and also Jimmy, maybe the biggest casualty rather have been the people who work in the hotel industry. There have been a lot of retrenchment and all this. So probably their spirits are also being lifted up and said, okay, now the UK has lifted the ban. Now they're immediately thinking it's going to translate immediately to an uptick in sales. So that means there's more money. That means you can get our jobs back. Is this a feasible thing?
Willis, I think a lot of the decisions to lay off and close properties at the coast, which is a reality. It actually did happen. It's not an exaggeration. Obviously those are very tough decisions for investors. It's never an easy decision to lay off staff or to shut down a business. When you lay off somebody, you're not just affecting that individual, you are affecting a family. If somebody can't get a job, then they resort to options that are not favorable to the country through issues around crime, etc. So yes, it is positive news, but for any change to happen, I think we need to relook at the opportunity markets, UK being one of them, and I think in terms of inbound travel, the UK has been quite significant to Kenya. Just to give you some statistics, in 2011 we had about 200,000 British travelers into Kenya, which represents about 16% of the total arrivals into the country. This number has dipped by 40% plus. So it's quite a significant dip. However, there are definitely other markets that have continued to support the destination, including the UK, I must say, even though they were not allowed to travel. There are our numerous partners who sell the destination who continue to be in solidarity with us. And we believe that they will do the best they can to help a recovery from their source markets. But as I said, there's other opportunity markets. We need to look and see how we can attract more markets, especially down to the coast, which was the worst hit. The resident market, and I have to keep emphasizing on it because I think it's a major opportunity, and we need to rethink our approach as an industry and not look at the Kenyan traveler as a last resort or as a traveler who, if we can't get the overseas market, then we rely on them. I think the Kenyan traveler today is a very sophisticated traveler. They travel overseas, they travel to many, many destinations. And I think the beauty about it is that they are indeed beginning to travel a lot. If you look at long holiday weekends, most of the hotels are very busy with residents. If you look at the Christmas and Easter periods, school holidays in August, I think what we need to start doing is to encourage the residents to travel a lot more frequently, so to try and close off those pockets. And I think that can actually help in ensuring that we don't get into situations where we have massive layoffs and massive shutdowns of properties, just for the sake of a single market. I think that is a very dangerous position to be in as a destination. So we need to encourage regional travel. We've got our neighbors in Uganda, in Rwanda, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. We need to encourage that. But having said that, we also need to be realistic and look at these international source markets and their maturity in terms of overseas travel. The UK, North America, specifically USA and Canada, Germany, Italy, France, they are quite mature in terms of their travel, not just their short-haul travel within their regions, but also long-haul travel. So we can't ignore them. And as I said, tourism is an export product. And, whereas we also need to make sure that we communicate about tourism and encourage Kenyans to travel, we must also export the product, very much like tea and coffee. There's a huge consumption of tea and coffee in Kenya by Kenyans, but we still export it. It wouldn't be realistic to say, now let's stop exporting tea and coffee. Now Kenyans, you fill the gap by drinking more tea and more coffee. It's not realistic. So I think it's tough decisions that investors have taken. We hope the situation regularizes very quickly and people get their jobs back. It's important that people are working. We've got a very positive population, population who we need to bring back. And it's also, I think, part of, fighting crime and other issues.
And also, I'll just also ask Mike a question, kind of related to that, about local or resident travel. It's a conversation that we've been having even right now about when you say, for example, that it's going to take us about a year to recover, isn't that also denting? It's a delicate balance. It's also saying, sitting at home, I'm like, okay, so we have a year to recover. Okay, fine, let me not travel then, because we're still in recovery.
No, the fact that there was a travel advice does not change the fact that we still have very good products out there. You saw the other day at the World Travel Awards, despite everything that was going on, we still managed to scoop quite a number of awards.
I have actually some of
for the destination, for hotels, for tour operators,
cruise port,
for cruise port,
ranked Africa's leading national park. Kenya is one of the leading airlines. KTB voted the leading tourist board. It is sort of like we won sort of the Oscars of the world travel.
So despite the fact that we had problems along that part of the coast, we still were able to win. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the product is still very, very good. And again, the fact that, let me qualify the issue of the 1 year. Like, for example, if you have an airline that's flying to a certain destination and you pull it out, what do you do with that aeroplane? You probably find another destination to take it to. And this is what happened when some of the charters withdrew. So once the charter starts flying to another destination, it also takes time to get it off that route and bring it back to its original route. So these are the dynamics that play around the tourism recovery itself. It's not meant to dampen the spirit of travelers or of the locals. It's just a statement of fact. Now, coming to the locals, we've always had domestic tourism as part of our agenda. And I remember saying here, I think sometime last year on Citizen TV, that we developed a domestic tourism strategy in 2008. And the private sector worked at that time with the Ministry of Tourism. And we had no budget for that strategy. So the private sector actually funded it. When we did that, we handed it over to the minister then, Honorable Balala, who then pushed it to Kenya Tourism Board. And from that time, you've seen a lot of promotions going through for domestic tourism. Joint radio promotions with local stations, TV, joint TV promotions, adverts in the press, billboards out everywhere,
yes,
asking Kenyans to travel internally, and that has played a big part in pushing the domestic product. So we've seen growth, both in domestic consumption and the promotions that we are doing as industry. So we still urge Kenyans to travel to Kenya. Yeah, we still urge them, but we also cognizant of the fact that
there's a reality.
Most of domestic travel is very family based, and rotates around the school holidays and the long weekends. However, we still have other segments of the domestic market that can assist, like conferencing.
Yes.
We had a teachers conference in Mombasa just the other day. We have the accountants, the institute that does a huge event every year. We are now seeing county governments coming up with strategies. So it's something that will grow. And within that strategy, we had actually indicated that we would like domestic travel to be 50% of the total tourism numbers into this country.
Now?
Right now, it's about 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously with the slump, then the numbers would change. But we would have wished to have out of the total of 2 million tourists, would have wished that 1 million came from Kenya and the region. And once you have that, then you have a solid domestic base that supports you even in bad times.
Willis, maybe maybe I could just also add
Sure.
to what, if you allow me, to what Mike is saying. I think, Kenya is a tourist destination, and what we are celebrating right now is a win for a specific market. There are wins that will come about for other markets that we will celebrate. We have President Obama visiting here, which is coming up.
Yeah.
The Pope, we had the beatification that happened. So there's several wins that we will have as a destination that we must celebrate. And the celebration, it's important not to be viewed as a celebration at the expense or ignoring another important market. We will celebrate big wins. I think this Tembea Kenya initiative from the Kenya Tourist Board has been very successful, and we must celebrate that. We must celebrate the fact that now Kenyans have appreciated that this is our country. We must travel, we must go and do all these things, and you'll be surprised how many more Kenyans are able to say that I have been to the Masai Mara, I've been to Amboseli, I've been to Samburu. It's not just about the coast, because remember, once upon a time the resident market was very coast-centric, but now they're traveling on safari. So I think it's important that we appreciate that we're celebrating a win in an important source market that's coming from outside, and it mustn't be viewed as being at the expense of a very important market, which is the Kenyan market. We are Kenyans, and we must support our own people. Yeah.
There's an interesting comment I've seen here on our SMS platform, that is 22422, and keep sending them just in case you have some questions, and also just your comments in general in the tourism industry.
Yes.
There is somebody who says the problem is that in Kenya fees are too high. Michael says park fee, for example, is too high. He says $80 per day compared to the Serengeti in Tanzania, which he says is about $60. Apart from that, there is also that general notion that travel is expensive, and I know Mike was also pointing about the people, the guys who travel from, let's say, the UK, Canada, and the rest, they start planning in January. So is that a concern? And also tied with that, maybe what in both your views is the biggest challenge that in selling Kenya? Yeah.
There's not, Willis, you cannot point to one challenge, because tourism is very much dependent on the macro environment, and you will find that various things, various events happening or various issues will affect tourism. The first one that is very key is security. Yeah, because you need to feel secure when you're traveling, and that is what really led to the advisories.
Yes.
Then we have other elements that come into play. The cost of the airfare. cost of the hotel,
the park fees, according to
the park fees, as has been pointed out,
yes.
park fees, because we've had that discussion with government before, and we feel that we need to level it out so that we can compete. Because if you look at what Tanzania has to offer, the border is invisible, but the animals don't know that. They cross into Serengeti and Mara the same way. So if you're on this side of the imaginary border, you pay $80. If you're on the other side of the imaginary border, you pay $50. So we've spoken to government to try and level that playing field of park fees. But you will find that all these other elements that come into play, the weather, for example. If it's raining, then you may not be able to enjoy a game drive or a day at the beach. So you find that there's all these elements that we try to address as industry so that we can get the people back. If you go back, rewind a bit to the previous government and Vision 2030, which we don't seem to hear much of nowadays. The plan was to have 3 million international visitors by 2012 and push it to 5 million by 2030. And how are we going to do that? Obviously, we needed to develop some products. We needed to look at some resort cities. We needed to look at expansion of the airports. We needed to look at the general air access into the country, and not just Jomo Kenyatta. We had proposed an expansion of Malindi Airport to take jets. Kisumu is an international airport. By all means, you can land any aircraft there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so there's no reason why we should not have flights into Kisumu and feeding into the Western Circuit. So we seem to have forgotten that we had a vision to hit 5 million international visitors. And now that we've gone back to less than 1 million, we are concentrating on travel advice. Do we go back to the 1 million or do we go back to the 2 million? And can domestic live up to the expectations? So we need to probably take a step back and ask ourselves, where did we really want to go? Now that we have this breather, and see whether we can revive that vision and push it probably under the devolved government system which we have.
All right, because we are running out of time. As you answer that, I also want you just to tackle another question. How can you make travel more marketable to the ordinary mwananchi? Yes,
I think Willis, we have a great product in Kenya. There's so much in terms of things to see, things to do. I think we need to relook at our infrastructure, and I think we need to make we need to develop products that are affordable across the board. If you look at South Africa, for example, that is a very popular tourist destination, including for Kenyans. I think one of the main advantages that they have is that they have the infrastructure. They have the top end, they have the middle end, they have the more budget. So therefore, travel is open and available to a much wider group of traveler, domestically and internationally. And I think that's something that we need to do. I think we need to be able to relook at our product. We need to offer a wider variety of product in terms of accommodation, clean accommodation, of course, safe and secure, that can tap into another market, because I think there's still a huge opportunity in Kenya. I don't even think we've touched the surface.
Yes.
I think we've all been focusing on the high-end traveler, the person who will spend the kind of money that is the hospitality industry charges. But there's another market. There's the middle market that is a big market, and we need to develop infrastructure that promotes or encourages them to travel, because there's just so much to do in this country. The infrastructure has improved in terms of roads, the road network. So in terms of accessibility, that is being addressed. I think the infrastructure in terms of accommodation needs to be addressed. Absolutely.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we had for today. Of course, this is a conversation I will keep having. You've been here more than once. We'll invite you, because we really need to. We feel that it's time to celebrate and also look celebrate Kenya, but also look at ways that we can help the tourism industry and get people traveling more and more. And so we've been hosting Mike Machado, who's the CEO of the Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers, and Jimmy Kariuki, who is the sales and marketing director of Sarova. And thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. Of course, you can continue with the conversation once we get off air with them. You can go online. We're always available at Citizen TV Kenya, Tulu Saburu. If you have suggestions of what else you want us to do, what else you want us to talk about, get us there online, and we have quite the contact list, and we can always invite them to come back. But thank you for your comments. Now, we're going to take a short break and go to the band. But remember, after this, Kirigo Ngaro is talking about grooming, ladies grooming. There are some models involved, so you might want to also be waiting to watch these models and what they're wearing, and send in your comments and suggestions as well as tips on makeup. So that is coming up after the band. Remember, #for breakfast 22422. Good morning.